Welcome, alchemists. This is Joseph from the Tome of Knowledge. Today, we start the week by rewriting the very laws of your life. We are diving deep into the philosophy of change and metaphysical causality. Remember this: you are not a victim of the world. You are the world in motion. You are the first cause. I have mapped these architectures for you to ensure your transition from the leaden state to the golden reality is absolute. Listen closely, because by the end of this journey, your reality will have no choice but to follow your lead. I am Joseph, and your sovereign expansion begins now. Let's begin. Introduction. The prelude to sovereignty. The journey into the Chronicle of the First Cause is not merely an encounter with a narrative, but a collision with the fundamental mechanics of existence itself. To understand the Reality Weaver is to step outside the prescribed boundaries of the human simulation and recognize that the history of the world is a tapestry woven from the threads of individual consciousness in the light. For eons, the collective mind has been conditioned to believe in the supremacy of the external event, taught to react to the shadows cast upon the screen of time as if they were the source of light. We have been raised in a culture of secondary causality, where we fruitlessly attempt to rearrange the furniture of our lives without ever realizing that we hold the blueprint of the house. This introduction serves as the definitive bridge between the state of the reactionary observer and the sovereign weaver, preparing the spirit to receive the high-frequency protocols that define the transition from a leaden history to a golden destiny. We are exploring the metaphysical anatomy of change, stripping away the vestigial layers of the scarcity mindset today for all. We reveal the luminous core of the first cause that resides within every soul currently vibrating at the frequency of awakening. At the heart of this chronicle lies the recognition that the universe is not a collection of solid objects interacting through force, but a fluid information field responding to the signature of the observer. The Reality Weaver understands the truth. The Weaver understands that matter is simply spirit vibrating at a slower rate, and therefore, the material world is the most obedient and malleable element in the cosmos. In the lower density paradigms, change is perceived as a slow, painful process of physical labor and strategic manipulation. The Weaver, however, operates from the center of the wheel in the divine flow. The Weaver utilizes the leverage of the Absolute to collapse time and move mountains through the sheer weight of their internal conviction. This introduction invites you to question the very nature of what you call solid reality. If the wall is made of atoms, and the atoms are made of energy, and the energy is directed by thought, then the only real barrier is the static. This static of doubt is what you have allowed to pollute your mental broadcast. We are here to clear that static, to recalibrate your internal antenna, and to return the loom of destiny to the hands of its rightful owner. The philosophy of the first cause demands a radical departure from the vincular logic of the modern world, which suggests you are a mere product now. The Chronicle of the Realities reveals that these are merely historical simulations, scripts that the mind accepts as truth until the moment it chooses to rewrite them. To be a weaver is to possess the quantum eraser, the ability to look at the timeline of lack and recognize it as a fictional narrative that no longer serves the evolutionary trajectory of the self here. We are entering a space where causality is no longer a chain of events stretching into the past, but a vertical impulse descending from the source into the present moment. You are not a consequence. You are an initiation. This realization is the sovereign pivot, the moment when the individual stops asking the world for permission and starts giving instructions to it. This is the weight of the first cause, a responsibility that is as immense as it is liberating, for it proves that the power to change the world is identical to the power to change a single thought. As we delve into the interesting nuances of this metaphysical history, we observe the mechanics of the mirror, the process by which the internal state dictates the field. The scarcity parasite relies on the illusion of objective fact, convincing the soul that the bank account, the relationship status, or the physical health are realities that must be dealt with on their own terms. The weaver knows better. The weaver understands that these are residual reflections, the energetic echoes of previous states of being in the world. To react to the reflection is to become trapped in a feedback loop of lack, where the mind observes a problem, creates the frequency of that problem, and thereby ensures the problem's continued existence. The Chronicle of the First Cause teaches the art of the blind look, the ability to observe the material world while maintaining an unshakable vision within the mind. This dual consciousness is the signature of the master, the one who can stand in the middle of a storm and see only the calm of the finished victory, eventually forcing the storm to dissipate by the sheer refusal to acknowledge its sovereignty. The expansion of this narrative also touches upon the subatomic sovereignty of the spoken word and the silent decree today. In the history of the weaver, sound is the primary architect. Every word spoken from a place of resonance is a vibrational command that the vacuum of space is legally bound to fulfill. We explore the interesting reality that the universe is semantically responsive, meaning it listens not just to the definitions of our words, but to the feeling tone behind them. The weaver does not use language to describe what is. They use language to call forth what is becoming. This is the difference between observation and declaration. While the masses are busy describing the darkness, the weaver is busy declaring the light. This introduction prepares the listener to audit their own internal and external vocabulary for the great work. Recognize that every I am is a signature on a universal contract. To speak of trying or needing is to broadcast the frequency of the parasite. To speak of having and being is to broadcast the frequency of the source. We are learning to speak the language of gold, a dialect of certainty that leaves no room for the stutter of hesitation in the sovereign mind. Furthermore, the Chronicle of the First Cause introduces the concept of temporal collapse, the realization that the distance between the thought of abundance and the physical possession is a variable determined entirely by the density of belief. In the leaden age, we were taught that time is money, and that great things take great amounts of time for results. The weaver recognizes that time is a projection, and that in the higher frequencies, the harvest is simultaneous with the seed. This interesting metaphysical shortcut is the secret behind the impossible successes that baffle the mainstream world. When a mind is fully aligned with the source, the lag time of the material world is reduced to near zero for all. You are not waiting for the money to come. The money is waiting for you to become the version of yourself that already possesses it. This is the collapse of the horizon, where the future is brought into the now and the dream is recognized as the only true fact. Introduction sets the stage for a week of total acceleration and power in the divine presence. The listener is encouraged to drop the baggage of waiting and step into the emanation of having. Finally, we arrive at the ethos of the radiant empire, the understanding that the reality weaver does not build for the self alone, but for the expansion of the entire source network. The abundance generated through the first cause is radiant and has no shadow. It does not come at the expense of others, nor is it subject to the laws of competition or theft. It is original wealth, created from the primordial substance of the mind. This makes the weaver a universal asset, a point of light through which the infinite resources of the vacuum flow into the human experience. The Chronicle is a call to imperial excellence. This is a reminder that your prosperity is a divine duty and your success is a metaphysical necessity. As you listen to these chapters, you are not just consuming a story. You are undergoing a molecular recalibration. You are being invited to join the order of the first cause, to take your place at the loom of reality, and to weave a destiny that is eternal. You weave a destiny that is as brilliant, as vast, and as eternal as the consciousness that conceived it. The loom is ready, the threads are golden, and the first cause is yours to command. Welcome to the beginning of the end of all lack. Welcome to the era of the Reality Weaver. Your time of sovereignty has arrived, and the gold of the universe is flowing to you. Chapter 1. The Awakening of the First Cause. The architecture of the human experience begins with the recognition of the fundamental deception that governs the leaden simulation of ordinary existence. Most souls move through their days under the heavy weight of the illusion of the current, a deep-seated belief that they are merely passengers on a river of circumstances over which they have no control. This trance is a mechanism for the parasite. This collective trance is the primary mechanism of the scarcity parasite, which seeks to disconnect the individual from their inherent power as the weaver of reality. To understand the first cause, one must first dismantle the myth of the external world as a solid, independent entity that dictates the terms of one's life. In the lower densities, the person reacts to the market as a law. The person reacts to the fluctuations of the market, the opinions of others, and the limitations of their physical surroundings as if these were unchangeable laws of nature. However, the awakening of the sovereign begins when you realize that the world is not happening to you, but through you. The current that seems so overwhelming is actually a projection of 1,000 past thoughts. It is a lagging echo of previous states of being that has gained a temporary momentum in the material plane. By recognizing the delay between thought and manifestation, the seeker stops fighting the current and starts to understand the source of the flow itself. This chapter serves as the definitive rupture with the state of the reactionary observer, the version of the self today. The self is forever trying to fix problems at the level of the effect. To fix a problem at the level of the effect is like trying to change the image on a cinema screen by grabbing the cloth of the screen. It is a futile effort that only leads to exhaustion and despair. The reality weaver, guided by the internal wisdom of the source, understands the image on the screen is a result of light. Therefore, the first step in the philosophy of change is the retraction of attention. You must stop feeding the current with your emotional energy. Every time you complain about a lack of resources, every time you fear a future event, and every time you resent a past failure, you are essentially pouring your creative life force back into the very structures of lack you wish to escape. The scarcity parasite thrives on this emotional leakage, using your own power to build the walls of your prison. Awakening requires a radical, sovereign silence, a withdrawal from the noisy drama of the senses, to relocate the seat of power within the unshakable stillness of the first cause. As we expand into the deeper dimensions, we encounter the necessity of integrity. Vibrational integrity is the ability to maintain an internal state of abundance regardless of the current physical evidence. This is the hallmark of the master. In the leaden age, people believe that they will feel wealthy once the money arrives, or they will feel loved once the partner appears. This is a reversal of the law. The physical world is a lagging indicator of the sun. If you wait for the shadow to change before you change your light, you will wait forever. The first cause requires you to inhabit the frequency of the finished, to feel the weight of the gold, and the freedom of the success while the external room is still empty and silent. This is not faking it. It is the conscious application of the primary signature of the sovereign mind. You are deciding from the level of the source what the reality is, and you are refusing to negotiate with the temporary silence of the material plane. This unshakable certainty acts as a phase lock on the field, eventually forcing the atoms of your environment to crystallize into the form of your internal decree. The illusion of the current is sustained by the visible tyranny. The constant bombardment of sensory data tells you who you are and what you can achieve based on your current coordinates. To break this tyranny, the weaver must cultivate the internal sight, the capacity to see through the density of the physical world and recognize it as a fluid information stream. When you look at your life, you are not looking at a final result in this time. You are looking at a snapshot in transition. By changing the internal observation, you change the mathematical probability of the next moment. This is the quantum sovereignty that we explore as the foundation of the new week. You are learning to operate from the vertical dimension, where the first cause originates, rather than the horizontal dimension of the effects. This shift in perspective is the most significant event in the history of an individual's evolution, for it marks the moment they move from being a subject of history to being a founder of reality. The scarcity parasite cannot survive in the presence of a mind that has realized its own causal nature. The awakening process further requires the dissolution of the victim script. This deep-seated narrative suggests that the universe is indifferent or hostile to your expansion. This script is a fundamental error in the mental software, a bug that prevents the individual from accessing the infinite credit of the source. The reality weaver understands that the universe is a neutral multiplier. It simply returns to you exactly what you provide as frequency. If you provide the frequency of a victim, the universe will faithfully provide you with persecutors and hardships to validate your state of being. If you provide the frequency of the sovereign, the universe will faithfully provide you with kingdoms and resources to validate your authority. There is no moral judgment in the field. There is only resonant symmetry for you. Therefore, the responsibility for change lies entirely within the individual's choice of the primary impulse. To start the week as a weaver is to take absolute ownership of the vibrational broadcast, recognizing that every thought is a brick in the architecture of the life you are about to experience. As we conclude this first architecture, we settle into the state of command. This is the point where the seeker no longer feels the need to manifest through struggle, because they have realized that they are the very source from which all manifestation flows. The current is no longer something to be feared or fought. It is something to be directed. You stand at the center of your world as the motor immobile, the point of absolute stability of mind. The material world revolves around your center. This is the true meaning of causality metaphysica, the understanding that your presence is the law and your resonance is the limit. The week ahead is not a series of days to be endured, but a series of creative voids to be filled with the gold of your intention. You are the first cause, the weaver, and the master of the current. The illusion has been pierced, the observer has awakened, and the loom of destiny is now under your total and radiant control. The journey has begun, and the result is as certain as the rising of the eternal sun. Welcome to the first day of your sovereign life, where your word is the decree, and your vision is the only truth that matters to the universe and the source itself. The expansion of the first cause continues as we investigate the molecular mechanics of belief, the stage where the weaver realizes that every thought acts as a physical gravitational pull within the subatomic field. In the leaden simulation, belief is often mistaken for hope, which is a passive and weak frequency that implies the possibility of failure for the seeker today. The sovereign, however, operates through absolute cognitive certainty, a state of mind where the desired outcome is treated with the same factual nonchalance as the floor beneath one's feet. This certainty is the universal authorized signature that bypasses all the administrative friction of the material world. When you stop trying to believe, you release the old parasite. When you start knowing from the source, you release the tension that holds the scarcity parasite in place. This expansion teaches that the current of your life is not shaped by your effort, but by the depth of your assumption. By assuming the state of the wish fulfilled with a cold surgical precision, you effectively order the vacuum to collapse the infinite possibilities. You collapse the possibilities into the specific golden reality you have chosen to inhabit. As this chapter reaches its deeper dimensions, we explore the symmetry of the mental mirror, the process by which the internal state of source consciousness begins to overwrite the physical evidence of the senses. The scarcity parasite relies on the tyranny of the visible for life. The parasite forces the individual to react to the current lack of resources, as if it were a permanent law. The resonant mind, however, understands that the physical world is a lagging indicator, a shadow cast by the thoughts of the past. By maintaining an unshakable resonance with the internal sun of the source, the weaver begins to project a new reality with intensity. The weaver projects a reality with such intensity that the physical molecules of the environment have no choice but to rearrange themselves. This is the stage of vibrational overriding, where your internal abundance becomes so loud and so coherent that the external silence of the material world is forced to harmonize with you. You find that you are no longer competing now. You are no longer competing for resources within the current. You are creating a new current that carries those resources toward you with the inevitability of a magnetic tide. The expansion further delves into the dissolution of the frequency of asking, a stage where the individual realizes that traditional manifestation techniques are often subtle affirmations of lack. Techniques are lack if they are performed from a place of perceived need. The mind in resonance with the first cause does not ask for abundance. It acknowledges it. This is the frequency of the finished, a state of absolute cognitive certainty that views the desired outcome as a historical fact that simply hasn't reached the physical senses yet. The parasite introduces doubt. The scarcity parasite attempts to introduce the static of doubt by pointing to the temporary silence of the physical world, but the weaver remains phase-locked with the source signal. This unshakable alignment creates a coherent wavefront that eventually overcomes the resistance of the material plane. You are effectively ordering the vacuum in the name of the source. You use your resonance as the signature that authorizes the release of universal capital into your personal sphere of influence. This is the sovereignty of the signature, where your very thought is a legal tender in the bank of the Absolute, backed by the infinite gold of the source itself. As we reach the apex of the awakening, we encounter the biomagnetic expansion. We encounter the biomagnetic expansion of the field, the point where the weaver's physical presence begins to alter the energetic temperature of their surroundings. Because the anomaly is vibrating at the frequency of the first cause, which is the frequency of infinite increase, their field acts as a broadcasting tower of prosperity. When you enter a room, you are an event. When you enter a room or a digital network, you are not just a person. You are a vibrational event that triggers the latent abundance in everyone and everything around you. Projects flourish in your proximity. Stagnant assets begin to move, and other souls are catalyzed into their own wealth consciousness simply by being within your radius. This is the aura of the sovereign. The aura is a field of positive contagion that proves that the abundance of thought is the most powerful social and economic force in existence. You have moved beyond the economy of scarcity and even beyond the economy of self, entering the economy of the source, where your personal wealth is a byproduct of your role as a universal multiplier in the divine plan. The final expansion of the first chapter explores the unity of the observer and the supply, the ultimate realization that the source, the thought of wealth, and the physical gold are three different expressions of a single unified substance. The scarcity parasite is finally and permanently neutralized at this level because it requires a subject-object split to function. It needs a you that doesn't have and a something else that does. In the first cause, that split is healed. You look at the wealth of the world, the skyscrapers, the digital currencies, the vast resources of the earth, and you see them as your own extended body. There is no more getting, only rearranging. This is the Zen of the weaver, a state of havingness now. This is a state of unconditioned havingness, where you are as comfortable with 1 billion as you are with a single cent, for you know that the supply is as infinite as the space between the stars. You have reached the singularity of abundance, where your mind is the source, and the source is your mind. The journey through the first cause has brought you to your own power. The result is a life of radiant immensity that flows from the eternal core of your being. You have mastered the first day of the transformation, and the loom of reality is waiting for your next command. The current has shifted, the old world has dissolved, and the new era of the Sovereign Weaver has begun in the heart of the Absolute. You are the gold and the light. Chapter 2. The Alchemical Mind. The transmutation of human consciousness from a state of reactive leaden density to the radiant clarity of spiritual gold requires a profound understanding of the alchemical principle of correspondence. In the ancient traditions, alchemy was never merely about the physical transformation of base metals. It was a veiled psychological process designed to reveal the divine architecture of the mind. To enter the stage of the alchemical mind is to accept that your thoughts are the prima materia, the raw substance of the universe, waiting for the heat of your focused intention to change its molecular structure. The leaden state is characterized by a heavy, opaque vibration where the individual feels separate from their desires and trapped by the weight of past failures. This density is a mental fabrication, a calcification of the soul that occurs when we allow the scarcity parasite to dictate our perceptions of what is possible. Breaking this state requires the application of metaphysical heat, a deliberate intensification of your internal frequency that begins to melt the rigid structures of the old self and the simulation. As the lead melts, the weaver begins to recognize that the substance of a problem is identical to the substance of a solution. The only difference lies in the rate of vibration and the clarity of the observer's vision. The alchemical process within the mind moves through the stage of dissolution, where the weaver must let go of the leaden identity for the source. This identity is built on the pillars of how things are and what I can afford, both of which are anchors that keep the consciousness submerged in the lower planes of effect. To transmute these thoughts into gold, you must first allow them to dissolve into the universal solvent of the source. This means reaching a state of mental neutrality about current lack. The alchemical mind does not fight with the lead. It understands that lead is simply gold that has forgotten its own nature. By bringing the light of awareness into the darkest corners of your subconscious, where fear and scarcity reside, you begin the process of sublimation. You are effectively lifting your thoughts out of the basement of survival for the absolute. This is the stage where the weaver stops trying to make money and starts to become wealth, recognizing that the external currency is merely a physical byproduct of the internal golden resonance. As the transmutation progresses, the mind enters the phase of coagulation, where the newly purified intentions begin to take on a solid, undeniable form today. In this state, the alchemical mind operates with a surgical precision, filtering out the vibrational dross of doubt and hesitation that normally pollutes the creative process. You begin to understand that a single, pure thought of abundance, held with the heat of total conviction, is more powerful than 1,000 hours of physical labor performed from lack. The gold of the mind is characterized by a high-frequency coherence, a state where your desires, your words, and your feelings are perfectly aligned with the source. When this alignment is achieved, the alchemical marriage occurs, the union of the masculine impulse of will and the feminine, receptive field of the universe in a perfect golden synthesis. This union results in the philosopher's stone of consciousness, a state of being that turns every experience it touches into a golden opportunity. You no longer look for the gold in the world. You carry the gold within you, and the world has no choice but to reflect that internal shine in the form of resources, connections, and unexpected windfalls of the spirit. The transition from lead to gold also involves the mastery of the vibrational furnace, the ability to maintain your internal heat even when the external world appears cold and unresponsive. The scarcity parasite often attempts to extinguish the fire by presenting challenges that trigger the old leaden reactions of panic or frustration in the mind of the seeker. The weaver, however, uses these challenges as alchemical fuel, transmuting the energy of the obstacle into the momentum of the breakthrough. You realize that the resistance you feel from the material world is actually the pressure required to turn the coal of your desire into the diamond of your reality. This is the true secret of the sovereign today. If you can maintain the frequency of abundance while the bank account is low, you have successfully completed the transmutation. You have proven that your mind is the dominant force and that the material world is the subordinate reflection. This victory is a fundamental restructuring of your soul's relationship with the universe, moving you into the throne. In the final stabilization of the alchemical mind, the weaver achieves a state of fixed gold, where the consciousness of abundance becomes the permanent, default setting of the being. You are no longer doing alchemy. You are the gold. This state is marked by a deep, unshakable peace and a radiant confidence that does not depend on external validation. You understand that the current is now entirely under the command of your alchemical will. The leaden age of struggle, competition, and not enough has been completely burned away in the furnace of your awakening. What remains is the radiant empire of the mind, a space of infinite potential where every thought is a seed of gold and every breath is creation. You move through the world as a living catalyst, an alchemist of reality who understands that the first cause is the only cause. The week ahead is the canvas upon which you will display your new golden nature, weaving a tapestry of prosperity that is as enduring as the stars and as bright as the sun that now shines from within your own purified spirit now. The expansion of the alchemical mind leads the weaver into the deeper chambers of vibrational distillation, a process where the soul learns to separate the subtle from the gross with extreme intentionality. In the leaden state, the mind is cluttered with the gross matter of collective fears, social conditioning, and the debris of past traumas that act as anchors. To refine this into gold, you must undergo the purification of the intellect, where you begin to audit every thought form that passes through your consciousness. This is not a passive observation, but an active alchemical filtering. You are identifying the leaden impurities, those whispers of "I cannot," and you are casting them into the furnace of the source. As these lower frequencies are burned away, what remains is the essential sulfur of the spirit, the pure, undiluted desire for expansion and sovereignty that is the true engine of all creation. This distilled desire is the concentrated fuel that powers the alchemical mind, allowing it to maintain its golden glow even when the environment seems to lack opportunity. As the chapter expands, we encounter the law of hermetic resonance, the understanding that the inner gold and the outer gold are the same substance, appearing at different levels of density. The scarcity parasite maintains its grip by convincing the seeker that the gold is out there and must be hunted, mined, or earned through arduous physical toil. The alchemist, however, recognizes that the physical gold is simply the condensed shadow of the mind. By focusing your work entirely on the internal transmutation, you are effectively precipitating reality from the higher planes. This is the stage of quantum precipitation, where the weaver learns to hold a mental image with such high-frequency intensity. The physical world feels a structural necessity to match your vision. You are not begging the universe for a result. You are providing the universe with a vibrational blueprint, so coherent and so powerful that the vacuum has no choice but to fill it with material form. This is the ultimate mastery of the leaden simulation and the soft, responsive medium of life. The expansion further explores the fixation of the volatile, the alchemical art of taking the fleeting, high vibrational insights of abundance and making them permanent fixtures of your character. Most people experience flashes of gold, moments of inspiration only to have them evaporate when the heat of daily pressure is applied to the mind or the spirit. The sovereign weaver learns to fix these states, turning a temporary mood into a permanent sovereign frequency. This is achieved through the alchemy of constant affirmation, not through empty words, but through the deep, cellular recognition of your own divinity. You are hardening the gold, ensuring that your resonance with the source is stable. In this state, you become alchemical constant in a world of variables. While others are tossed about by the changing currents of the economy, you remain anchored in your internal empire, knowing that your supply is dictated by the infinite vaults of the Absolute and not by the limitations of the physical market. You are the source of all opulence today. In the final stabilization, we address the transmutation of time and space through the alchemical mind. The leaden consciousness is a slave to time, believing in the necessity of the wait. The alchemist, however, operates from the eternal now, the zero point of the source where all possibilities exist. By collapsing the distance, you perform the high alchemy. You understand that the gold is not coming to you. It is being revealed through you as you strip away the leaden veils of doubt. This realization brings about the great work's completion, where the weaver stands as a living philosopher's stone, a point of singular authority that transforms every leaden challenge into a golden victory in the name of the All. You move through the world not as a seeker of wealth, but as the source of opulence, a radiant being who has mastered the internal furnace and has emerged with a spirit made of indestructible, eternal gold. The transmutation is total, the mind is sovereign, and the empire of your reality is now ready to be built upon the foundation of this perfected truth. The alchemical mind further illuminates the vibrational distillation of the self, a process where the weaver learns to separate the subtle from the gross with surgical intentionality. In the leaden state, the mind is cluttered with collective fears and inherited limitations that act as a gravitational anchor on the spirit. You must undergo the purification now. You audit every thought form that attempts to cross the threshold of your consciousness. This is not a passive observation, but an active alchemical filtering. You are identifying the leaden impurities, those whispers of "it is not for me," and you are casting them into the furnace of the source to be consumed. Distilled desire is your new concentrated fuel. As the chapter expands, we encounter the law of hermetic correspondence, the absolute understanding that the inner gold and the outer gold are the same divine substance. The scarcity parasite maintains its grip by convincing the seeker that the gold is out there, hidden in a bank, and must be earned through leaden toil. The alchemist knows the shadow. By focusing your work entirely on the internal transmutation, you are effectively precipitating reality from the higher planes of thought into the lower planes of matter. This is the stage of quantum precipitation, where the weaver learns to hold a mental image with such intensity that the physical world feels a structural necessity to match it for the source. The expansion further explores the fixation of the volatile, the alchemical art of taking the fleeting, high vibrational insights of abundance and making them permanent, unmovable fixtures of your character. Most people experience flashes of gold, only to have them evaporate when pressure is applied. The sovereign weaver learns to fix these states for the all. This is achieved through the alchemy of constant recognition, a deep cellular acknowledgement of your own divinity that bypasses the need for external proof. You are hardening the gold, ensuring that your resonance with the source is so stable that no leaden circumstance can ever diminish your internal shine. You remain anchored in your internal empire. In the final stabilization of this expanded second chapter, we address the transmutation of time and space through the alchemical mind. The leaden consciousness is a slave to time, believing in the necessity of the wait. The alchemist, however, operates from the eternal now, the zero point of the source where all possibilities exist as a present reality. By collapsing the distance between the seed of a thought and the fruit of its manifestation, you perform the highest alchemy, the transmutation of delay into immediacy. You understand that the gold is not coming in a distant future. It is being revealed as you strip away the leaden veils of doubt that blinded you to its presence in the eternal now. This realization brings about the great work's completion, where the weaver stands as a living philosopher's stone, a point of singular authority that transforms every leaden challenge into a golden victory. You move through the world not as a seeker of wealth, but as the source of opulence, a radiant being who has mastered the furnace of the internal spirit. The transmutation is total, the mind is sovereign, and the empire of your reality is now ready to be built upon the foundation of this perfected alchemical truth. You are the gold, you are the light, and you are the sovereign. The world of lack has dissolved forever, replaced by the eternal shine of your own high vibration consciousness and divine decree. Chapter 3. The Physics of Prosperity. The transition from alchemical transmutation to the actualization of material wealth requires a fundamental shift in how the weaver perceives the structure of space and the nature of the vacuum. In the leaden simulation, space is viewed as an empty container, a void that must be filled through arduous effort and the manipulation of solid objects. However, the physics of prosperity reveals the truth now. The vacuum is not empty. It is a pressurized field of infinite potential, a superfluid medium that is infinitely responsive to the presence of a coherent observer. To master the third pillar of the reality weaver's path, you must understand that abundance is the natural, default state of the universe, and scarcity is an artificial vacuum created by the interference patterns of fear and doubt. When the mind operates from the frequency of the source, it stops trying to pull things from the outside world and begins to recognize that it is the very point of origin from which all matter precipitates. The vacuum does not resist your expansion. It supports it with a mathematical precision that mirrors the clarity of your internal decree. You move from seeking to emanating today. The physical world is forced to fill the space you have cleared with the golden resonance of your intention. The mechanics of this prosperity depend on the law of energetic displacement, which suggests that for a new reality to manifest, the weaver must first create a sovereign void within their own consciousness. Most people fail because their fields are cluttered with the old identity. The physics of prosperity teaches that the universe abhors a vacuum and will move with lightning speed to fill any space that has been consciously cleared and held open through the power of expectation. This is why the process of releasing is just as vital as the process of directing. You must be willing to emotionally and mentally vacate the premises of lack for the new gold. Treat your current limitations as if they have already evaporated into the nothingness from which they came. When you stand in the center of your life with the quiet, unshakable certainty that the supply is already on its way, you create a suction effect in the quantum field. This is a metaphysical reality where the vacuum of the absolute rushes to equalize the internal pressure. The weaver does not chase the gold. The weaver becomes the empty vessel of such immense value that the gold has no choice but to pour in. This chapter further explores the concept of resonant friction, which is the only thing that prevents the instantaneous manifestation of your desires. In the leaden world, friction is perceived as external obstacles or market competition now. In the physics of prosperity, we recognize that friction is entirely internal, existing as the vibrational static that occurs when a part of your mind still believes in the reality of the scarcity parasite. To eliminate this friction, the weaver must cultivate a state of laminar flow where the thought of wealth and the feeling of possession move together without contradiction. This requires a radical auditing of the subconscious undercurrents that often run counter to our conscious declarations. When you say you are wealthy, but feel the contraction of fear when looking at a bill, you are creating a turbulent field that cancels out your creative impulse. The mastery involves reaching a point of superconductivity where the source signal can pass easily. You become a transparent medium for the infinite, a clear lens through which the light of the absolute can focus into the diamond point of physical manifestation. As the weaver settles into the physics of prosperity, they begin to understand that currency is accurately named It is a current of energy that flows toward the point of least resistance and highest resonance in life. The scarcity parasite attempts to dam this flow by creating the illusion of hoarding and stagnation, making the individual believe that wealth is something to be trapped and guarded. The alchemical mind knows that wealth is a dynamic circulation, and to stay in the current, one must maintain the frequency of the flow. This means acting from sovereign generosity for all. The movement of resources is seen as a proof of the infinite supply, rather than a depletion of a limited reserve. By treating every financial transaction as an act of sacred circulation, you reinforce your position as a major node in the universal wealth network. The more you allow the abundance of the source to flow through you, the more the vacuum identifies you as a channel. The vacuum increases the volume and velocity of the gold that passes through your hands. You are no longer a person trying to survive. You are a sovereign terminal for the distribution of infinite value. The expansion of this chapter delves into the singularity of supply, the realization that there is no distance between the need and the provision in the higher dimensions. The illusion of delay is a product of the human perception of time, which the physics of prosperity seeks to collapse. By operating from the 0 point, the weaver recognizes that the thought of a resource and the existence of that resource are simultaneous events in the quantum field. The only thing that separates them in the physical world is the density of doubt today. To master the vacuum of abundance is to reach a state where you no longer wait for results, because the state of waiting implies that the result is not yet here. Instead, you inhabit the state of having with such intensity that the material world is forced to accelerate its reorganization to match your internal reality. This is the gravitational pull of the golden mind. This is a force so powerful that it bends the local architecture of time and space to bring the desired outcome into the immediate now. You are not moving toward your success. Your success is being pulled toward you by the irresistible vacuum of your own sovereign certainty. You recognize that the empire of reality is built on the foundation of self-generated pressure. You do not look to the world to give you a reason to feel abundant. You provide the abundance to the world as your primary vibrational offering. The physics of prosperity is the science of becoming the prime mover in your own universe, the one who initiates the sequence of cause and effect from a position of absolute authority. The week ahead is your primary laboratory now. You stand at the threshold of a new dimension of wealth, where the scarcity parasite has no ground to stand on because you have replaced the vacuum of lack with a vacuum of infinite potential. The gold is not just a possibility. It is a structural inevitability of the path you have chosen. You are the weaver, the physicist of the absolute, and the sovereign of the vacuum. The world is your medium, the source is your power, and the harvest is now. Welcome to the mastery of the flow, where the laws of the universe are finally and forever in your favor. The expansion of the physics of prosperity leads the weaver into the profound realization of quantum superpositioning, where every possible state of wealth already exists in a dormant, wave-like form. In the leaden simulation, people believe that wealth must be created or built through a linear progression of time and effort. However, the sovereign understands that prosperity is not created. It is selected from an infinite field of available frequencies. The scarcity parasite functions by narrowing your perceptual aperture, forcing you to focus only on limitations. To expand the third chapter is to widen this aperture, allowing the mind to recognize that the vacuum of abundance is currently pressing against every molecule of your being, waiting for a resonant command to collapse into solid form. This is the stage of vibrational observation, where you stop looking at what is and start looking at what is possible with great intensity. The possible becomes the only actual. You are not just a witness to reality. You are the collapse mechanism that determines which version of the universe becomes your physical experience. As this chapter reaches its deeper levels, we explore the thermodynamics of thought, specifically the movement of energy from the high-pressure state of the source to the world. The alchemical mind recognizes that need is a form of high-resistance pressure that actually pushes abundance away. In contrast, sovereign assumption creates a low-resistance pathway through which the infinite resources of the vacuum can flow. This is the secret of the path of least resistance, where the weaver stops trying to force the world to change for the better. Instead, the weaver becomes a superconductor for the natural opulence of the absolute. By removing the insulation of doubt, those thick layers of mental noise and societal conditioning, you allow the current of prosperity to pass through your life without heat or loss. This state of superconductivity means that a single intention can manifest with a miraculous velocity. It is simply the natural result of a mind that has eliminated the friction of the scarcity parasite. You find that opportunities no longer require hunting. They are drawn into your orbit by the irresistible gravitational pull of your own internal coherence. The expansion further delves into the fractal nature of supply, the understanding that the first cause contains seeds. In the physics of prosperity, there is no such thing as a limited resource, because the weaver is connected to the singularity, the point where all matter and energy originate. When you manifest a single golden opportunity, you are not depleting the field. You are activating a fractal pattern that will inevitably produce more. This is the principle of radiant expansion. Every success you achieve acts as a broadcasting node that triggers similar resonances in your future timeline. The scarcity parasite fears this expansion because it cannot survive in a non-zero-sum environment. By recognizing that your abundance is an infinite iteration of the source, you lose the grip of possession and enter the flow of sovereignty in the spirit. You become like the sun, which does not worry about running out of light because it is the light. Your financial and spiritual wealth becomes a self-sustaining reaction, powered by the eternal vacuum of the absolute. In the final integration of this expanded third chapter, the weaver masters the art of the sovereign void, the ultimate technique for massive breakthroughs. This involves the energetic eviction of every leaden thought, person, or habit that no longer resonates with the golden code. To inhabit the physics of prosperity, you must be willing to let the old world crumble without reaching out to save it. You understand that the void, created by the departure of the old, is the exact space required for the arrival of the new gold. This is the vacuum of the great work, a sacred space of high-tension expectation where you stand in the silence, unshakable, knowing that the laws of physics and metaphysics are currently conspiring to fill that space with the material equivalent of your internal gold. You have moved beyond the effort of the lead and into the grace of the gold in the light of truth. The week ahead is the demonstration of this power, where you will witness the vacuum responding to your presence with a precision that confirms your status. As a master of the flow, the vacuum is open, the current is live, and the sovereign is ready to receive. Prosperity is not coming. It is being selected by the authority of your awakened and radiant presence today. The physics of prosperity leads the weaver into the profound realization of quantum superpositioning, where every possible state of wealth already exists in a dormant form within your immediate environment. In the leaden simulation, people believe that wealth must be created through a linear progression. However, the sovereign understands that prosperity is selected now. It is selected from an infinite field of available frequencies. The scarcity parasite functions by narrowing your perceptual aperture, forcing you to focus only on the narrow bandwidth of current limitations. To expand the third chapter is to widen this aperture, allowing the mind to recognize that the vacuum of abundance is currently pressing against every molecule. The vacuum is waiting for a resonant command to collapse into solid form. This is the stage of vibrational observation, where you stop looking at what is and start looking at what is possible with such intensity that the possible becomes the only actual. You are the collapse mechanism that determines which version of the universe becomes your physical experience today. As this chapter reaches its deeper levels, we explore the thermodynamics of thought, specifically the movement of energy from the high-pressure state of the source to the low-pressure state of the material world. The alchemical mind recognizes that need is a form of high-resistance pressure that actually pushes abundance away. In contrast, assumption creates the flow. Sovereign assumption creates a low-resistance pathway through which the infinite resources of the vacuum can flow. This is the secret of the path of least resistance, where the weaver stops trying to force the world to change and instead becomes a superconductor for the absolute. By removing the insulation of doubt, you allow the current of prosperity to pass easily. This state of superconductivity means that a single intention can manifest with a velocity that seems miraculous to the leaden mind, but is simply the natural result of a mind that has eliminated the friction of the scarcity parasite. You find that opportunities no longer require hunting. They are drawn into your orbit by the irresistible pull of your own coherence. The expansion further delves into the fractal nature of supply, the understanding that the first cause of wealth contains within it the seeds of its own infinite multiplication. In the physics of prosperity, there is no such thing as a limited resource, because the weaver is connected to the singularity. When you manifest an opportunity, you activate a fractal pattern. This is the principle of radiant expansion, where every success you achieve acts as a broadcasting node that triggers similar resonances in your future timeline. The scarcity parasite fears this expansion because it cannot survive here. By recognizing that your abundance is an infinite iteration of the source, you enter the flow of sovereignty and the golden mind now. You become like the sun, which does not worry about running out of light because it is the light. Your financial and spiritual wealth becomes a self-sustaining reaction, powered by the eternal vacuum of the Absolute. In the final integration of this expanded third chapter, the weaver masters the art of the sovereign void, the ultimate technique for massive growth. This involves the energetic eviction of every leaden thought, person, or habit that no longer resonates with the golden code. You are now the master of the physics that govern the material world, and your command is the law that the vacuum obeys with joyful and total precision. The architecture of your abundance is complete, and the gold of the universe is yours. Chapter 4. Transmutation. The process of turning thought into material value is the practical application of the alchemical furnace within the marketplace of human experience. In the leaden simulation, value is perceived as something external, a limited commodity that must be traded for time or labor. The reality weaver, however, recognizes that value is a vibrational property projected onto matter. To master the fourth pillar of this journey is to understand that you are not a consumer of value, but the primary manufacturer of it. The transmutation of thought is the bridge between the invisible realm of the source and the visible realm of the physical bank account. It requires the weaver to stop looking at the world as competition and start seeing it as raw information. When you think a thought of abundance, you are initiating a phase shift in the quantum field, commanding the vacuum to reorganize its subatomic particles into the specific patterns of wealth and influence that align with your internal decree. The mechanics of this transmutation depend on the mastery of vibrational condensation to gain weight in the material plane. Most people fail because their thoughts are thin and fragmented, lacking the gravitational pull required to affect the physical world. The scarcity parasite thrives on this mental dispersion. To break this loop, the weaver must cultivate a laser-like focus, a density of intention that treats the desired outcome as more real than the solid wall in front of them. This is the stage where the invisible becomes indestructible. You are effectively packing the vacuum with your intent, creating a high-pressure zone of prosperity that must erupt into the physical world. This is not a struggle of will. It is a structural necessity. The material world is the subordinate reflection of the mental cause, and the effect is inevitable. This chapter explores the alchemy of exchange, where the weaver transmutes internal resonance into external currency without the friction of effort. In the leaden age, we were taught that to earn more, one must work harder. This is a deception. In the physics of sovereignty, we recognize that to manifest more, one must simply resonate higher in the flow. Material value is attracted to the point of highest frequency and lowest resistance. When you operate from the state of the finished work, you become a magnetic north for resources. Opportunities do not come because you chase them. They come because they are legally bound to follow your resonance. You stop seeking and start providing from your infinite source. Recognizing that your presence is a source of infinite value, you stop negotiating from a place of need and start dictating the terms of reality from a place of authority. You are not asking for a share of the pie. You are the one who defines the nature of the feast. This involves the neutralization of the scarcity feedback and the temporary evidence of the senses. The material world often presents a lag time where the old leaden structures are still dissolving. The parasite uses this delay to introduce doubt. To master the fourth chapter is to develop metaphysical immunity, an unshakable adherence to the internal gold regardless of external silence. Treat current lack as a mathematical ghost of a past version. By refusing to give energy to the ghost, you starve it. This sovereign indifference is the highest form of alchemical fire. It burns away illusions and clears the path for precipitation. You know that the gold is not coming, it is being revealed through your vision. You begin to see that money is simply liquid intelligence for expansion and beauty. The parasite attempts to moralize wealth or make it seem scarce. The alchemical mind knows that wealth is as infinite as the space between the stars. By viewing currency as a vibrational current rather than a solid object, you remove the grip of fear that causes stagnation. You become a superconductor for the flow of value through your sovereign hands. The expansion of this chapter delves into the quantum architecture of opportunity, realizing that the specific how is already encoded in the what of your intention. The leaden mind wastes energy on logistics. The weaver understands that the first cause is self-organizing. When you provide the frequency, the vacuum calculates the most efficient path. This is the grace of the gold, where doors open before you have even reached them. You are not doing the work. You are being the cause. This week is the stage where you demonstrate this truth, watching as the material world rearranges itself to match your decree. Transmutation is the ultimate act of sovereign responsibility in your kingdom. You determine the value of your time and energy. By refusing leaden valuations, you set a new standard of gold that others follow. The empire of reality is something you declare into existence with every breath. The scarcity parasite has been evicted, and in its place stands the radiant authority of the first cause. You are the alchemist and the sovereign. The expansion of transmutation requires a deeper dive into the density of conscious command. The bridge to the visible gold is constructed from non-negotiable expectation. In the leaden simulation, people treat desires as hopes. The sovereign recognizes that a thought in the first cause is a vibrational mandate. You must condense the dream into a physical asset. As this chapter reaches deeper levels, we explore the kinematics of value and the velocity of thought. The parasite introduces the toxin of delay. The alchemist knows that time is merely the distance between the thought and the total acceptance of it. By increasing your vibrational velocity, you collapse the timeline of your manifestation in the material. The expansion further delves into the sovereign valuation of the self. The market cannot give you what you have not claimed as worth. If you resonate as a golden sovereign, providing an infinite stream of value, the universe will rearrange the global economy to meet your frequency. You are recapitalizing your soul with the infinite gold of the absolute today. In the final integration, the weaver masters the art of the material echo. Every dollar that enters your life is vibrational evidence that your transmutation is working. You do not just spend money, you circulate authority. This shift ensures a state of increasing returns, where every manifestation acts as a seed for an even greater harvest in your life. The transmutation process reaches its zenith when the weaver understands the architecture of the invisible bridge. In the leaden simulation, people believe that seeing is believing. The sovereign operates under the law of preemptive realization. Believing is seeing. You treat internal visions as primary facts and the external world as secondary data. This requires a radical hardening of the will. You no longer look at current resources to decide what is possible. You look at the infinite wealth of the source to decide what is mandatory. This is the alchemical fixation of the ideal, where a thought exerts a gravitational pull on molecules. You are curving the space of your reality toward your sovereign decree. We explore the kinematics of value and the velocity of absolute conviction. A scarcity parasite introduces the idea of a long struggle. The alchemist knows this delay is mental drag. By increasing your resonant velocity, you collapse the timeline. Resources appear through non-linear channels that the rational, leaden mind could never have predicted. The expansion delves into the sovereign valuation of the presence. The market does not pay for your time, but for the vibrational quality you bring to it. In the leaden world, value is tied to effort to keep the masses exhausted. In the weaver's empire, value is tied to authority. 1 hour of alchemical work is worth more than a decade of labor from lack. The weaver masters the art of the material echo, using success as a vibrational amplifier. You do not just receive money. You witness the manifestation of your word. Every dollar is scientific evidence that your internal furnace is at peak efficiency. This shift ensures geometric growth, where every result seeds an even greater harvest of physical reality. The scarcity parasite is now irrelevant, for you have proven you can manufacture value out of the raw information of the vacuum. You move through the world as the founder of a new reality. The golden code is the operating system of a universe fully responsive to your command. The transmutation is absolute, and the empire you are weaving is now an undeniable fact. Chapter 5. The Geometry of Sovereignty. The construction of the radiant empire begins with the mastery of the geometry of sovereignty, the understanding that your reality is not a random collection of events, but a structural manifestation of your internal alignment. In the leaden simulation, life is perceived as a series of chaotic, external forces that the individual must navigate through defensive strategy and adaptation. The weaver, however, recognizes that the universe operates on a principle of crystalline order, where every experience, resource, and connection is a geometric extension of the observer's primary frequency. To enter the fifth pillar of this journey is to stop being a wanderer and start being an architect of the absolute. You are learning that the space around you is not empty. A space is a responsive information field that takes shape according to the angles of your perception and the stability of your conviction. When you stand in the center of your life with the unwavering authority of the first cause, you create a sovereign point that organizes the vacuum into a coherent, prosperous structure. This is the moment where the mind becomes material. The geometry of your thought dictates the geometry of your world. The mechanics of this imperial architecture depend on the law of centripetal abundance, which suggests that the more stable and radiant the center of a system is, the more resources it naturally draws into its orbit. The scarcity parasite functions by keeping the individual's attention fragmented and centrifugal. The parasite pulls energy away from the self and toward external problems, news, and social comparisons. This fragmentation weakens the structural integrity of your reality, leaving it vulnerable to the currents of lack and limitation. To build a radiant empire, The weaver must cultivate a monolithic presence, a state of being, so dense that it becomes the primary gravitational force. You are not reaching out to grab wealth. You are becoming the gravitational singularity that wealth cannot help but fall into. This requires a radical vibrational consolidation, where you pull back your energy from all external dramas and focus it into the single point of your sovereign decree. By becoming the unmoving center, you force the material plane to settle into order. This chapter further explores the structural resilience of the golden mind, the ability to maintain the architecture of your vision, even when the wind of effect attempts to blow it down. In the lower densities of consciousness, a single setback or a period of silence can cause the entire mental structure to collapse, returning the individual to the leaden state of despair. The weaver, however, builds their empire on the foundation of trans-temporal certainty. You understand that the physical world is a lagging reflection, and therefore, any temporary appearance of lack is simply a shadow pattern that has not yet been overwritten by your new golden light. To master the 5th chapter is to develop a structural immunity to the visible world. You treat your bank account, your current status, and your physical surroundings as work in progress, while keeping your internal eye fixed on the finished blueprint of the source. This unwavering focus acts as a tension cable that holds your reality in place, preventing the field from collapsing back into the disorganized state of the scarcity simulation for the weaver. As the weaver deepens their understanding of the radiant empire, they begin to recognize the fractal expansion of sovereignty, the process by which a single point of authority multiplies itself across all domains of life. The leaden mind believes in compartmentalized success, thinking that one can be wealthy but unhealthy, or powerful but unloved. The source is a holistic impulse. The alchemical mind knows that the first cause demands total symmetry. If you are a sovereign in your mind, that sovereignty must eventually manifest in your finances, your relationships, your health, and your influence. This is the imperial resonance, a frequency that does not tolerate leaden pockets of lack in any area of the experience. It is a total alignment. By applying the golden code to the totality of your being, you ensure that your empire is balanced, durable, and infinitely expansive. You are not just building a career or a bank account. You are building a total reality, a bespoke universe designed by the source to express its highest potential for beauty and abundance through you. This is the expression of the weaver. The expansion of this chapter delves into the ethics of the sovereign terminal, the understanding that the power to weave reality carries with it the responsibility of infinite increase. The radiant empire is not a closed system of hoarding, but a radiant node of source distribution. The scarcity parasite attempts to make the seeker feel guilty for their own expansion. The parasite suggests that your wealth is taken from others. The weaver knows that wealth is informationally generated from the vacuum, and therefore their prosperity actually increases the vibrational capital of the entire human network. When you prosper through the first cause, you create a lifting current that makes expansion easier for everyone in your radius. Your empire is a lighthouse of possibility, a physical proof that the leaden simulation can be overcome, and that the source is the only true authority. By embracing your role as a sovereign steward, you move beyond the ego of gain and into the majesty of contribution, where your personal success becomes a divine service to the evolution of the collective mind. In the final integration of the 5th chapter, the weaver stabilizes the crystalline core of the empire, reaching a state of effortless dominion. This is the point where the geometry of sovereignty has become so fixed and so stable that it no longer requires active mental effort to maintain. You have hardened the field, and the world has accepted your law as fact. You move through your days with the quiet elegance of the master, knowing that every breath you take is an affirmation of your empire, and every thought you think is a further refinement of your golden reality. The Scarcity Parasite has no access to this frequency. It has been permanently filtered out by the structural integrity of your new life in the absolute today. You are the architect, the weaver, and the sovereign of the radiant empire. The vacuum is your servant, the geometry is your tool, and the gold is your undeniable fact. The empire is no longer a dream of the future. It is the solid, radiant ground upon which you stand. Welcome to the completion of the structural phase, where your word has become flesh and your vision is truth. Chapter 6. The Singularity of the Source. The culmination of the sovereign journey resides in the realization of the singularity of the Source, a state where the distinction between the Creator and the creation is permanently dissolved. In the leaden simulation, the mind operated under the illusion of duality, perceiving a gap between intention and result. However, the sixth pillar demands the total integration of these parts now. To enter the singularity is to understand that you are not merely a participant in a universe of abundance, but the very source from which that abundance is projected. This marks the beginning of the emanation era. The weaver stands in the eternal present, recognizing that everything they desire is already a present tense reality within their own vibration. The harvest is your presence. The mechanics of this final integration depend on infinite self-reference, where the mind stops looking to the external world for validation. The Scarcity Parasite loses all power because its primary weapon, the illusion of time and distance, is rendered obsolete. When you realize the world is a 360-degree mirror of your frequency, the concept of waiting becomes a logical impossibility. If the mirror is not reflecting the gold, you do not wait for the reflection to change. You recalibrate the internal sun of your conviction until it has no choice but to shift. This is the state of structural absolute, where your resonance creates a permanent bend in the reality field. You have reached critical mass, where the vacuum collapses into material form with almost zero lag. This chapter investigates the metaphysics of the eternal harvest, a state of perpetual expansion where limits are discarded. The singularity reveals that cycles of crash or loss are only features of a mind that believes in a finite supply. For the sovereign, the harvest is a continuous loop of increasing returns. Every bit of gold produced serves as the seed for 1,000 more. Because the source is the infinite vacuum, there is no possibility of depletion. The weaver operates from radiant non-attachment, knowing manifestations are temporary garments of internal power. By maintaining vibrational gratitude for what is eternally available, you ensure laminar flow. You are the horizon itself, expanding to include the infinite opulence that you already are. The expansion into the singularity requires the final eviction of the observer parasite, the voice that tries to analyze or doubt the sovereign state. The weaver understands that reality is a fluid response to their dominant assumption. Being realistic is simply agreeing to be a slave to the leaden simulation. The sovereign chooses to be causal, setting a new standard of fact. This mastery involves sovereign blindness, a refusal to acknowledge evidence of lack as having any legal standing in your universe. You are so focused on the golden signal of the source that the noise of the old world becomes completely inaudible. This total immersion in the frequency of the finished work is the final key that unlocks the vaults of the infinite for the weaver. As you integrate the final pillar, you become a universal singularity, a point of such vibrational density that you become a source of gravity for the human collective. You are a living protocol of abundance. You have bypassed the leaden economy of effort and entered the golden economy of being. The very act of thinking is now a decree of manifestation in your radiant empire. The week of rewriting the laws of your life has led to this moment of total structural integrity. The first cause is no longer a concept you study. It is the heartbeat of your existence. In the final stabilization, The weaver accepts the eternal sovereignty of the now, recognizing the journey never ends because the source is deep. But the struggle and the fear have ended today. You stand as a completed alchemist, a master weaver who has turned the leaden history of a victim into the golden chronicle of a god. The radiant empire is fully established, its vacuum filled with opulence, and its foundation is indestructible gold. The parasite is gone, leaving only the silence of absolute power. The harvest is here, the work is finished, and the empire is eternal. Quantum immediacy is the state where the thought of abundance is felt with such sensory richness that the field cannot distinguish it from a physical fact. This is the collapse of the horizon. You no longer look toward your goals. You look from them as your current coordinates. You are anchoring the future into the present, forcing the world to jump directly to the result. We explore the radiant neutrality of the master, the ability to possess all things without being possessed by them. The alchemist recognizes that material value is simply condensed light. Since they are the source, it can never be lost. This is the freedom of the infinite supply, where you move through your empire with the touch of a sovereign who knows the vacuum regenerates. Your relationship with money has been transmuted from grasping to witnessing. You are the observer of your own opulence, watching as the source network flows with the ease of a river. This neutrality is the ultimate protection. Because you no longer fear the absence of things, the frequency of lack has no hook. You are vibrationally transparent to all lower forces now. The weaver enters the state of eternal presence, where the chronicle of the first cause is a life to be lived. You have reached the 0 point of creation, where you are the loom, the thread, and the weaver all at once. The golden code is written into your very cells. You no longer need to try to manifest, for your existence is a constant state of manifestation in the all. The week of recalibration has ended in the total triumph of the spirit over the simulation. You stand at the center of the radiant empire, looking out over a world that is now entirely responsive to your touch. The lead is gone, the gold is permanent, and the source is fully awake within you. The harvest is your new eternal nature. You are the first cause and the master, the seventh pillar, the Ascension. The final architecture of the reality weaver's journey is not a conclusion, but an ascension into a state of perpetual becoming, where the laws of the leaden simulation are no longer even a memory within the refined consciousness of the sovereign. This seventh pillar represents the total integration of the first cause into the cellular and energetic fabric of your being for the gold. To enter the final chapter of the Chronicle is to step through the gate of indestructible opulence, a dimension of existence where the vacuum of the absolute is so perfectly synchronized with your will that the word and the world are one and the same. You have moved beyond the mechanics of transmutation, beyond the physics of the flow, and beyond the geometry of the empire today. You have arrived at the sovereign stillness, the point of absolute power from which all movement originates, but which itself remains unmoved. This is the ultimate victory over the scarcity parasite, not a battle won through struggle, but a total displacement of the old reality through the sheer, radiant density of your new golden nature in the light of the eternal source. In this final stage, the weaver understands that the golden code is not a set of instructions to be followed, but the very operating system of a universe that has been liberated from the gravity of lack. The leaden age was characterized by linear causality, where the soul believed it must travel from point A to point B. In the Ascension, you operate through spherical causality. The center of your presence expands outward in all directions simultaneously, touching every point of your reality with the frequency of the finished work. This is the state of total saturation, where your abundance is so pervasive that it no longer requires an active intention to sustain itself. You breathe in the infinite potential of the vacuum and breathe out the gold. The distinction between the inner and the outer has been revealed as a temporary scaffolding, a tool used during the alchemical process that is now discarded to reveal the seamless unity of the source. You are not just living in a prosperous world. You are the prosperity that the world is made of. The mechanics of the eternal harvest now function with a spontaneous precision. In the leaden world, great results required great friction, but in the radiant empire, the greatest results are the product of the greatest ease. This is the elegance of the first cause, a state where the universe responds to your lightest touch with a massive reorganization of its resources. You have reached a level of vibrational authority in the court of the Absolute. When you walk into a room, the frequency rises to meet you. When you think of a project, the assets begin to coalesce in the field before you have even spoken a word. This is the magnetic dominion of the Weaver, a field of attraction so powerful that it creates a void of fulfillment in your wake, ensuring every space is instantly filled with the highest expression of value. The Scarcity Parasite has been so thoroughly erased that its lower frequencies can no longer find a point of resonance within your mind. You are vibrationally invisible to lack and magnetically irresistible to abundance. This final expansion also addresses the trans-temporal sovereignty of the alchemical master, the realization that you are no longer a subject of time now. The leaden mind is always chasing a future or mourning a past, but the sovereign inhabits the eternal now, the only point where the first cause is active. By anchoring your consciousness in this era point, you have effectively stopped the leakage of power that occurs when the mind is fragmented across different timelines. You are temporalized gold in the presence of the All. You are a being whose presence is so dense that it bends the flow of time around it, bringing the harvest of 1,000 lifetimes into the immediate experience of the present moment. This is the secret of the infinite now, where the expansion of your empire is not a process that takes time, but a process that consumes time, turning every second into a monument of authority. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You are the beginning, the middle, and the end of every success you experience. As the Chronicle reaches its ultimate stabilization, the Weaver recognizes that the radiant empire is a living entity that grows in direct proportion to the Weaver's self-recognition. The more you acknowledge your divinity, the more the empire expands. This is the law of infinite mirroring, where the universe is constantly trying to keep up with the increasing majesty of your internal self-image. You have moved into the atmosphere of the Absolute, a state of being where the air you breathe is potential and the ground is evidence of your word. The struggle has been revealed as an impossibility in the face of your frequency. You stand as the Alpha and the Omega of your own reality, the one who saw the lead, chose the gold, and wove the tapestry of a new world. The final integration of the Golden Code is the silent decree, a state of such absolute certainty that even the need for spoken words is surpassed by the intensity of the resonant gaze. You look upon your life and see the perfection. You see the gold in the bank, the power in the connections, the health in the body, and the peace in the spirit, all reflecting the single light of the first cause. You are the sovereign Joseph, not as a name in a simulation, but as a title of authority in the kingdom of the real. Your journey through the Tome of Knowledge has changed the you that the world is made of now. You have successfully navigated the Alchemical Furnace, the quantum vacuum, and the imperial geometry to emerge as a perfected being of light and matter. The week of rewriting the laws is complete, and the laws now serve you with a loyalty that is as eternal as the source itself. The harvest is now perpetual, the supply is now infinite, and the Weaver has finally ascended. You move through the world as a living sun, an anomaly of the Absolute, who proves every day that the leaden age is dead and the golden era is the only truth. Your empire is established, your throne is secure, and your word is the law of the land. This is the end of the Chronicle, but it is the beginning of an eternal reign where every thought is a seed of a new universe. Every breath is the expansion of the infinite. The loom is yours, The gold is yours, and the power is yours, now and forever. The weaver has awakened, the source is revealed, and the world is finally and beautifully your own. Welcome to the eternal light of the radiant empire, where you are the first cause, the final result, and the sovereign master of all that is in the all.